Welcome to show 162 of the Arc Junkies podcast. Today I'm talking with Matt Adams, the owner and operator of RedSoul, based out of Seattle, Washington. RedSoul's metal art pieces have been on display in stores and restaurants such as Nordstrom's and Starbucks. We talk about his journey into welding and the pieces that he currently builds. Matt is truly an artist in every sense of the word, and it shows in the pieces he produces. Artistic metal is just one more path that welding can lead you down. The possibilities in this trade are endless, and today's episode allows us to explore yet another journey. Today's episode is brought to you by Everlast Welders. I just set up and dialed in the new Cyclone 200E MIG welder over the weekend, and it ran great. I messed around with some coupons and did some miscellaneous weld joints just to see how it would run. After I laid down a few beads, I decided to make a yard sign from an old plasma cutting piece I did a couple years ago. I had a lot of fun even though it was just a few tacks and some small welds. If you're looking to get a small MIG welder for the garage, the Cyclone would be a great choice. Check out their full line of machines today at everlastwelders.com and make sure to use code word ARCJunkies in the comment section at checkout when you buy any machine that comes with a stock foot pedal, and you'll get a free Nova foot pedal and TIG torch upgrade with your purchase. It's a $100 value. We're also brought to you by Rockmount Research and Alloys. They make great welding electrodes for maintenance welding, repair work, and hard facing. They also make some great abrasives, burr bits, and chemicals such as anti-spatter and cold calc. I recently had the chance to try out some of these products, and they performed just as they said they would. If you're in the mobile welding repair or maintenance welding business, I highly recommend checking out their full line of products at rockmountwelding.com and seeing which products are right for you. When I first heard about this company, I thought their products were too good to be true, and boy was I wrong. After welding a file to a piece of steel and not getting any cracks or undercut, they made me a believer. Having the ability to weld unidentifiable and dissimilar steels together sounds impossible, but it's not. You need to check out their Brutus line because that's exactly what it'll do. And what's more, the weld is rated for 125,000 pounds of tensile strength and 35% elongation, which makes it perfect for machines that generate high vibrations. Get the job done right the first time with Rockmount Research and Alloy. And last but not least, make sure to check out my friends over at ISOTUNES. ISOTUNES are Bluetooth headphones that meet the requirements of OSHA and NIOSH to be used as hearing protection in the workplace. I love my ISOTUNES Pro 2.0 for listening to music while welding and grinding. The noise canceling technology makes receiving calls in the shop a breeze. Check them out today at isotunes.com and use ARCJunkies10 at checkout and save $10 off your first purchase. All right, let's go ahead and get into the show. Fire up your machine, drop your hood, and turn me up 5.
You're listening to the Arc Junkies podcast. Helping you make every weld better than your last with each episode. And now your host, Jason Becker.
So Matt, tell me about RedSoul. What is RedSoul?
RedSoul is a creative metal fabrication shop here in Seattle. We specialize in the artistic side of metal fabrication and welding and problem solving.
So how do you actually get into like the metal fabrication part of it?
Well, it like anything, you know, it kind of took its twists and turns to get right here where we are today. And if someone would have asked me, you know, a 10-year, 20-year type business plan, I wouldn't have been able to have guessed with this one still. It all started for me. I moved up to Seattle and I was going to the University of Washington, and I took some art classes. And in the classes I was there was a welder, a little MIG welder, and I had the exposure to it. And I took that project and I welded up an art project, and from there I took that down to a local motorcycle shop, and it was just enough to get my foot in the door, and I let me start sweeping the floors, and that's kind of how it all started.
So have you always had like an interest in motorcycles?
I wouldn't say motorcycles for sure. It's definitely been just anything that's custom. Growing up, I was really into, custom cars, hot rods, um, you know, candy paint jobs, um, anything really that was not factory. We have a sign in the shop that says "fuck the factory." So um, we're definitely about like hands-on, one of a kind, special pieces that are you don't can't just find anymore.
So you guys don't do like batch project work or anything like that? Like I need 50 of these widgets, or it's
Yeah,
all
we do. We'll do small runs. It's
okay.
just not, thousands or hundreds, whatever, 50. We definitely will do, 50. If someone orders 100 custom chairs, we're going to make it.
Okay.
So, in fact, actually, I was talking with the new hockey team in Seattle here called the Kraken, and they're outfitting the entire arena with custom furniture. So we're setting up a meeting next week to talk with them about helping them develop a lot of their custom furniture. So that's pretty exciting. We're looking forward to that.
That'd be nice. And I've always wondered, like, because I go to like these restaurants and stuff that are like mom and pop, and they've got like that real custom feel with all the tables, the chairs, the bar. Like, how do you get into that? Because it's like by the time you find out that there's going to be a business there, it's already the grand opening. So, I mean, how do you get your foot in the door in that type of industry? Because, I mean, you're all over the place. You've got stuff in Nordstrom's. You've got stuff in different bars, all kinds of, like, really cool pieces of art and functioning art, too, and furniture.
It has a lot to do with knowing the general contractors, the architects, the interior designers. That's where it all starts. A client that's going to build out a restaurant will first assemble a team or go to an architect that they like, and then depending on how they like to operate, either the architect puts together a team, and just being in that network. What do you feel the same way, or how do you feel about that, Benny?
Yeah, a lot of it is building relationships and, and working with, like you said, the architects, the interior designers, even like the sometimes it's the owner of the bar or the restaurant where they want you to do your thing. And it's building that reputation as well, where you have a quality product and you have a good, sleek design, and people just are looking for that as well.
Okay. It's definitely you get a reputation, and it's something that does take time to build and to get into. Like you said, whenever a brand new restaurant or store opens up, I mean, that's a year old.
Yeah.
They're talking about designs sometimes up to 2 years before that ever happens, especially if it's a big store like Nordstrom's. When they opened up the new tower down in New York, I mean, that was like the full plan was like a 10-year project, but where we came in was about 2 years before it happened. So when we're working with something like that, there's a ton of design, problem solving, research, and development. The reasons why Nordstrom's comes to us is because we're willing to explore new techniques, and we try to think outside the box. And so if someone gives us a drawing, we're willing to put our input in there to try to make it better, because being the fabricators and the experience that we have allows us to, add to the design to make it better. A lot of the designers that you get the drawings from don't have the real life experience. So, and a lot of times they really are looking for someone to help with that. Not very often has anybody ever got angry if we gave our input. If anything, they're asking for it. So,
Right. And you got an artistic background too. So, I mean, you've probably had a lot of time filling up sketchbooks and coming up with different designs and, bringing a lot of those creations to life. So you have that artistic thought process, something that I personally lack.
Yeah, everybody's got their strong points, for sure. I've always considered myself an artist, more than a welder, and I definitely love welding. And to me, it's another tool to create things. And to me, it's definitely it's the best tool, because you can literally create anything if you know how to TIG weld, and you have the right tools, and you don't even need a lot of really super fancy tools. The fancy tools just make the job a little easier, you know, but you can still cut a piece of metal with a grinder and the grinding stone. If you got it, it just takes a lot longer than if you throw it on a plasma cutting table and the computer does it for you, but you can still do it. So,
and go ahead.
I'm just saying, I think that it's a unique skill set or craft to get into, because if you're creative and you're willing to work, you don't need a lot of real expensive equipment to get your foot in the door. So,
because you guys use a lot of like standard equipment in a really unique way to get metal to do things that it doesn't typically do. So like when you got to make things look like they've been aged or antiqued or matched a certain profile or vision, you can't just go to the store and buy a tool that makes that type of pattern or puts that sort of spin or look on a piece of material. So you guys have to come up with a lot of creative ways to get tools to do things that they're not necessarily designed for, but they'll kind of, you're bending the metal to your will, but you're also bending the tools to your will, if that makes sense.
Yes,
absolutely. Again, that's what's so cool about what we do and what we've put together. And again, I think metal fabrication, because there's really no rules. Like, you don't have to use a needle scaler just to clean some rust off something. Benny uses it all the time to like put this beautiful texture and blend patina, more of like textures. Go ahead, Benny. Why don't you help me out with that a little more?
I got a lot of experience texturing and manipulating metal when I worked at a art foundry in Walla Walla. And we did basically bronze sculptures for artists. And we would take, how do you replicate CNC foam? How do you make something look like plywood or a driftwood, piece of driftwood, and chasing your welds and then bringing back those textures? I'm using, die grinders, cutoff wheels, air hammers with blunt edges, and just, you sculpt your own tools to perform these things. And then I've taken it now here and doing that to just even raw metal. And it's like, how do you make hot rolled steel look at the weld joints look like hot rolled steel again? And just figuring out, I can take this sandpaper and then I take the needle scaler and hit it on the sandpaper, and that kind of embeds things. Or then, just trying to experimenting with different tools to create those textures you're looking for. And, I've had to take die grinder tools and then carve edges in them, and then a longer air tool, die grinder tool, and actually bend the shaft so it doesn't run true, and so it'll skip and create these organic textures. It takes time and practice and a lot of experience, and as soon as you get it, it gets easier and easier.
There's a lot of creativity that goes into that too, because you got to think, I've got to design this part or piece to make it look like this specific object. What kind of tool could I use? Like you said, who would think about bending a shaft on a die grinder or on a burr bit to get it to make a specific pattern?
Yeah.
You really got to think outside of the box on some of this stuff. And I think that's the cool thing about what you guys do, is it's so unique. So like my background is, everything, we have to cut it, like we'll cut it with a shear and then we bend it, and everything's like nice 90 degrees or 45 degrees. And then you clean up the weld corners and then you ship it out. I have done some artistic work. Like, we did some stuff out at Disney for, I want to say it was the, what the hell you call it? The Haunted Mansion. So there was some guardrails and stuff like that they wanted to have that antiquing look to. And so for the first couple of nights, they just had the apprentices over there beating on 1 inch by 1 inch square stock with a ball peen hammer, trying to get that antique look into it. And it wasn't until, like a couple of days later that they come to the conclusion, hey, we could take a jackhammer meant for busting up concrete, and we can probably fit like 10 of these pieces on an I-beam weld the ends together, clamp it really hard to the I-beam, and just beat the living piss out of it with a jackhammer. And then, they would cut it all apart and they'd rotate everything 90 degrees and weld it back together and clamp it back down so that all the sides had the different little dings and dents and all that stuff in there to where it looked like it had been aged steel.
Yeah, that's great. Oh yeah, I hear you for sure. We custom made a giant tumbler that's, what is that? It's got to be 8 feet long, 3 feet diameter. It's like a rock tumbler, but it's massive. It's a big one, and we put those what are the pieces that we have in there, Benny, from the blacksmith where the plugs?
They're like slugs coming off of like a Bliss punch press.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then we throw
the media
those in there.
So you throw that in there, and then you can throw in your steel pieces, and this thing just spins, tumbles the shit out of it. And like you said, it gives it the little blems and the imperfections, but in a consistent way. So it looks like it's been aged over time. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely little tricks, and there's a lot of tricks too with like the chemical, the finishing. So like we do a ton of black and steel, and a lot of the goal is for it to be black. One of the things that most people try to avoid is that if you leave the chemical on too long, it starts to rust. So if you're trying to antique something too, instead of using that chemical for what it's used, we use it for what it's not used to get that rusted finish on there also. There's different chemicals too, like muriatic acid and different ones too. And a lot of all the chemicals and things that we've figured out and in this industry have become, I think, more standard. It's just been through trial and error. There was never a book to go read to know about it. There might be now. But.
Yeah, I had a student that was trying to do that. We cut some stuff out on the CNC plasma cutter, and it was like a palm tree sculpture, and he wanted to kind of rust it out or make it look like it had been aged for a while, but then stop it at the right moment and clear coat it. So I want to say he took like a spray bottle of peroxide, salt water, and like a cap of bleach, and we shook it up and sprayed it on the steel, and like within minutes, like he had the look that he was going for, and it made it look like it was 20 years old. And then you hose all that stuff off, hit it with the air hose, dry it out, and then clear coat it, and it'll hold that kind of that look forever.
Yeah. Every time when you're talking, I got so many things that go through my head. I'm just like, I want to say that. There's these things that pop up, and I got to write them down and come back to all of them because, for sure. When you talk about like the palm tree and the plasma cutting, another really cool technique, the machine. So if you go in and you want the leaf to look like jagged, like an edge, we did a project that was a bunch of these leaves for a grapevine on a winery door. And so if you zoom in on the plasma cutter and you do these real jagged little points back and forth, when the machine goes to try to cut it can't keep up, but it's just like it's kind of making this shape that looks more organic instead of just like a nice smooth line for like a leaf, So.
Okay, so you put textures on the outside edges of the leaves.
Yeah, it's manipulating your tools to try to get
do something a little bit more unconventional.
Yeah, and then we were talking about the grinding and taking tools that you might not typically do. We just finished this. You might see it on it's on the Instagram. This project with a really, really legend graphic designer here in Seattle named Tim Gervin. He did so many like movies. He's got a massive, career of just big time projects, but we did this dragon, and he drew this dragon with a paintbrush, and he wanted to have an inlay in a client's vanity in the bathroom. And so we took the image, we scanned it, we put in the plasma cutter, we cut it out of 1/4-inch stainless steel. And then in order for the piece to look like it was made with brush strokes, I took your just basic grinder with grinding stones and flap disc. And I literally like carved this piece of stainless steel like you would carve a piece of wood. And yeah, it turned out really good. I wasn't sure how I was gonna to start off, how it was gonna be when I started off.
But then as Matt was carving it, it started stainless moves around a lot. So when he was finished, it was basically like a potato chip. And he's to me, he's all, what are we going to do, Benny? And I'm like, oh, we can flatten it. He's all, are you sure? I'm all, yeah, we've got this. I can figure it out. I know exactly what to do. So it's like, I'm all, we'll just take it through the roller and we'll get it to roll one way. So it's basically a half round, or take the wow out of all four, take the bowl out of it. So we did that, and then we rolled it the other way and we got it almost perfectly flat. Then took it back to the table and then used a porta power and other means to get it within like a half of an inch to be flat. And it was a challenge, and just trying to manipulate and think out of the box. How can I hold this? Where do I have to push down to make this move and make that move and make it become flat again without destroying the finished product? And we nailed it. It was good.
Yeah,
it was a fun project.
I like the fact, I like to take the wow out of it. I'm stealing that. So, I mean, that's a pretty neat idea. I wouldn't think of it that way. Like, as coming from an ironworker background, I'd probably just heat it up and start beating it on with a hammer. But you just put all that detail work into it. You can't really afford to even put it on a table and start beating it up, because stainless is going to scratch pretty heavy as it is. But yeah, putting it through a roller to at least get it all misproportionate in one direction, and then taking that back out of it. That's pretty clever.
Yeah,
and then flipping it around the other way to fix that again, to get it more flat, and then now here we go. Mm-hmm. The fun begins now.
Yeah, with metal, I think from my experience using heat, you gotta be real careful because it's really hard to control it. You know, especially with something big and you want it to be even. I think you have a lot better luck moving the metal when it's cold. I mean, sometimes when you see something it curved that way for one reason. If it curved this way, it can curve that way. Mm-hmm. And if you really wanted to, if you really wanted to mess it up, you could go all the way. So if you just can think of it as like bending it like it was in a car wreck, just a little lightly, a little soft, a little bit at a time. And you move it here, you move a little bit there, and you just be patient. And you work your way around. And Benny's really good at it. I think he learned a lot of that from the sculpting,
for sure,
in the casting place. Because using a portaband to make a piece of metal flat is pretty creative. Benny had to block up a bunch of different levels. And then you block it up with 2 inches, you clamp it all down, and then you make a little, like a little truss.
Gantry type thing.
So we could put that in there, and then it pushes against it, and it'll push it down. Mm-hmm. And you can you work your way around it. So again, I was thinking about that today too. Like what really is more than just welding is the problem solving, it's a lot of problem solving. So the more tools you have in your toolkit, the more chances you have, and the more knowledge you have to try to, I wouldn't solve that problem or challenge. I like that word challenge more than problem.
There's no problems. There's just solutions we haven't come up with yet.
Yeah.
So
I think that's pretty neat, and it's a different way of working with metal. I really like the artistic side of metal. It's something that I haven't got into, but like when I get that initial spark of interest and start putting things together. And I think that's the most important part of the most important step is you got to start somewhere. So you get the material and you start moving it and bending it and working it to your will. And I think that's the cool part about just like going out in the shop, tuning everything out and just forming it, into, whatever you're going to build, and things just start flowing. The creativity starts moving. Because like you get bored welding the same damn T-joint or outside corner joint, or, building the same box, or, repairing the same gas tank. The artistic side, I think it pulls a lot more out of you and allows that creativity to start flowing. And it's never it's never the same stuff. Like we did a lot of stuff at Disney, and that's what I was looking forward to, is like, let's do the stuff that's like outside of the norm. You know, you gotta build a blade of grass that's like 10 foot tall, so that when the people walk in the room, you know, they feel like they're in, you know, Never Land, and that they're a fairy or whatever. So and now we got to build this tree, and when, you know, it's all out of steel and aluminum and stainless, but when it gets done, it looks like a real freaking tree.
Yeah.
So I think that part is, it adds a whole new skill set to welding. You know, it's more towards that art style of welding.
Yeah. I got goosebumps when you start talking about it, because like the thing about when you do, how do I start? When it's artistic and when you're really in the groove, like you say, you got the right music on and your energy, you're producing energy inside you that will come through. It might sound cheesy, but it's very true. It comes through you and it goes into the thing you're making. And you can really feel it. Like you can really see it too. And that's, I think, what gives a handmade piece life. You know, it's not just a cold machine part from overseas. You know, there are imperfections and subtle blems and little things that give it its character. And again, like the more time you like finesse something, you sand it, you feel it, you know, as you're moving over something, you'll feel the little bumps, and you put more attention on that, and you're just really putting in your soul. Again, it's the truth. And I know Benny.
Yeah, I feel you. You know,
when
when I'm grinding, you know, they call us welders, but it's like we only weld for about 3 minutes, and then we mostly grind the rest of our lives away. And you got to get really good at grinding when you're doing all these fine edges and trying to take away all your welds. You know, I'm very proud of my welds, and I used to be all, I'm never going to grind my welds. But you know, now that I'm doing all this artistic stuff and building all this furniture, as I weld, you know, it's like when I grind, I don't even look at the seam. I look away. Sometimes I close my eyes and just feel up and down that what used to be the weld joint, that's the seam, and I feel for the bumps and lumps and things like that. And it's like, okay, I need to take care of it. I put a lot of love into the things that I do because I love what I do, and I appreciate art and the fabrication and what all goes into it.
That's the best part about it, that you love what you're doing.
Yeah.
That's the coolest. And I think that's the thing. That's what I love most about welding. Like I love everything about it. The structural side, the architectural, the artistic side, the repair side. I don't know. It's like anything else. And like I've done other things, and nothing's similar to welding. And like you said, Matt, like you're literally putting your soul into it when you're doing it. And we talk about all the time about how a weld is a fingerprint. It's identifiable. It's a mark. But I mean, like it's the same thing with the material that you're working on. You know, every bend, every twist, every punch, every hole that's going to be drilled into it. Yeah. Everything that you're doing it. I mean, it's an inanimate object, but you're putting life into it. You're leaving your signature, your mark. And Matt, I got a weird question for you. It's going to seem cheesy and off the wall. And Benny, same question to you, because you guys are both doing this hand in hand together. You mentioned putting the music on and it going through you. And I've noticed that depending on the project that I'm working on, or even down to the welding process that I'm doing, I will change my genre of music. Oh, yeah, so I've got everything on my playlist is like ridiculously eclectic. I've got like old school outlaw country, hip hop, R&B, 90s grunge, heavy metal, like a whole mix of it. Yeah. And depending on what I'm doing, it's like I know that, you know, if I'm going to start TIG welding, I'm going to put on like an instrumental from like Three Legged Workhorse. If you guys haven't heard of them, check them out. Awesome band, completely instrumental, no lyrics. But it just it gets my mind in I get into a certain headspace. And if I'm doing stick welding or something like that, heavy metal. I get into MIG welding, like, you know, I'll get on some like, you know, explicit rap music, and it just puts me into a zone, and I can like start timing the beat to what I'm doing. Do you guys have the same, or am I just the weird one?
No, you nailed it. Yeah. It's music is a huge part of it. I mean, everybody in the shop has their headphones on and they're doing and listening to whatever that, like you just said, whatever helps them get through it. But yeah, I mean, same thing. Like some of the when I was creating the forms for Nordstrom's and their handbags, and there was a feminine female form that I was carving and then ultimately making out of metal. And these are also ones that Benny has helped out massively with. But when I was originally, like you said, it's a feminine form. You're probably gonna do something a little more smooth, and like I don't know about words, sexy, but you're gonna listen. You're not gonna be listening to maybe some hard metal when you're trying to make these smooth lines and an hourglass figure of a woman. That's
I am.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. Everybody's different, right?
We all got our different little kicks. It's more of a time of day kind of mood. I like when I get in, I like something a little bit more mellower, and then as the day progresses, it gets a little bit heavier and heavier, and then at the end of the day, it kind of goes back to a mellower. But it's mostly all just between doom metal, heavy metal, and that stoner rock that I mostly have in my headset. And it's who I am. It's who I've always been pretty much since I was a young kid. I always dug the heavy metal stuff. So it's just like I put it on and it's my jam, and it keeps me motivated and creative.
Now they actually did a study to where heavy metal, like, it's going to sound weird, and I'm going to see if I can put it in the right words. And a lot of people that listen to heavy metal are highly intelligent. They equate it very similar to heavy metal because of the complexity to classic music, like a symphony, like an orchestra, because there's so many different parts and components and times and beats and this, that, and the other thing, that it causes like a higher level of intelligence. They found that people, and they've done studies on this, that people listen to like the heavy metal, very similar IQs to those of the people that listen to classical music, your Beethoven, Bach, Mozart, all that stuff.
I would agree.
Yeah. Because
I remember back in the 90s when I was working at a bicycle manufacturer and we were doing production bike work, and the production manager was like, he'd always put on Slayer, and I was just all, yeah, let's do this. And one of the guys was kind of more of a hippie, wanted Grateful Dead, and he's all, a lot of brain surgeons listen to Slayer when they're performing operation. It's long hours and they're keeping focused, and it's got that high beat, and they're just tooling away on the brain, and it keeps them going. Yeah. And I always go back and I think about that, and it's like, they're really intelligent. Yeah.
I'm probably with you, Jason. My playlist is all over the place. I mean, it depends on what type of mood you're in the day. It can. And it goes from lots of different things. But one thing I'll point out too, for me personally, like I kind of have a window, like when I'm really doing something creative, I kind of have a burst. So it's probably honestly like a real creative burst that I get is not very long. It's hour or two, and then I run out of gas on that because I just put everything into it. It's definitely a burst. So it doesn't mean that I only work for a couple hours and don't do anything. I think like it's all that energy funneling and focusing. It's the music, and my body can only take so much of it for so long. I feel like when I do that, I really get in that zone and I just go for it. I don't think about anything else. I don't even care what I'm putting down. I just do whatever's inside me. And then once that kind of phases out, then you can kind of come up, and then I can take that and I could work through that and refine it. And that takes a lot of time too. So I'd say like the first burst of those things. And that's when I'm doing the more creative pieces that are from scratch. Sometimes actually more often than not, the stuff that we do for Nordstrom's, there's a design team. We work very closely with the design team, and they have a pretty good idea what they want. I mean, they're not exactly a
small company. So yeah.
they'll come to us, and then I can give the input. And then, but there definitely were times where they'd unleash me on the the creative stuff, the sculptural pieces. And that was a pretty big opportunity, and for them to trust me and to just say, go for it.
Yeah, just take your artistic talent and just kind of free reign.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. I mean, last year obviously that would slow down quite a bit, but things are picking back up, and I think people are waking up. You guys down in Florida, I was just down there last week. I like it down there.
Oh, dude, it's wide open, man. It's wide open.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think you know, I think that you guys, I wish they do it here. I'll tell you that much.
That's what everybody says. Like, everybody comes down and they're like, wow, you guys can actually, like, the stores are open and you can still go to the beach and you can still, like, go to the store for, you got non-essential businesses open. It was like, yeah,
and I didn't see anybody dying in the streets and long
That's
lines
the thing.
around the
I seen
hospital,
the stats compared to like the populations of some areas that have a mask mandate, and then their population, their number of cases compared to Florida, which has like twice the population, no mask mandate, and like less than the cases that they're having. But I mean, it depends on where you go, what you do. I mean, I take precautions here. Most everybody does. You wash your hands. You keep away from people you don't know. And even the people you do know, you can wear your mask and, I mean, like social distance and all that other stuff. So, I don't know. What we're doing, it seems to be working. I mean, I know a lot of people that have caught it, but and they've come back from it. But then I know there's a lot of cases of people that caught it and it did, they didn't make it through. So...
Yeah, I'm not saying that this thing isn't real and that, it's fake or anything, but I just think that don't make the cure worse than the cause.
I don't think that the lockdowns are not. I mean, people still have to make, they've got to live their lives. You got to be able to work through things and, you still have to live your life. I mean, I'd rather get out there and do things than stay at home and be afraid. And we had a 97-day lockdown for here, and like I was going freaking mad in the house. And
for sure.
Homeschooling the kids, and it was a freaking nightmare. I mean, they were getting stressed out. I was getting stressed out. I was like, every day, I was like going for like a 45-minute walk, just get outside and just clear my head.
Well, here in Washington, Seattle is still locked down. I mean,
jeez,
it's not easy. I mean, they're barely loosening up, but yeah, I mean, honestly. It's for me, I think, you find one? I think, I don't know. It's a touchy subject, like you said, because it is something to take serious and people are affected by it. And then some people are not affected at all. So
yeah,
you can't really.
It's a different situation, case by case basis. I mean, Florida's nice too, because I mean, we get summer year round. I mean, that part kind of sucks because I don't get to see the leaves turn. I don't get to see snow, but I just want to see a little bit of snow, not a whole lot.
Yeah.
And I do like the rain, so I do want to visit Seattle at some point because I heard it's pretty much just rains there all the time. I'd like to see that. Probably wouldn't like to live in it, but it's like it's cool going other places and seeing it. Like I hated Florida growing up because I was like forced to move down here by my parents. I moved down here in '89. And I've always hated Florida because I've like always missed home. Like I knew Ohio as home. But like every time I go visit somewhere, it's like, oh, this is nice, but I miss home. Oh shit, home is now Florida. Okay, I'm starting to like Florida after, being down here for 32 years. It's kind of growing on me. But it's got its ups and downs. I don't think there's really any perfect place to live. I think everybody's got advantages and disadvantages where they're at. You guys got killer coffee and awesome alternative bands, and we have alligators in Florida, man. So hey,
I think you nailed it there. I mean, there's anywhere in the world that's absolutely perfect. And I guess a lot of it has to do with your mindset and how you look at it. And you can always find the good things anywhere, and you can always point out the bad things probably anywhere too. So.
Right. So I got a question for you. When you guys are going through, when you get these pieces in, do you have? Is it like a sketch, a rendering, or is it like a detailed set of prints that you're getting of? And then, do you make templates off of that, or do you just start cutting up and going right into the metal and moving it and beating it to your will?
A little of everything you said right there. Each project, the projects come in they're all a little different. There's times where we get blueprints, drawings that people want that made exactly the way it is. Sometimes those are nice, sometimes it's nice to just just go to work and
Know exactly what's laid out before you and lay it out, cut it, weld
be
it.
a lot less stressful.
Yeah. I would imagine.
But then, there's times where someone comes to you and it wants you to do something from scratch. And then, that's definitely, I would say, let's see here. Let me try to think of a good example of it. Even architects actually will come to you often. We'll just give you it's essentially it's a napkin sketch. I mean, maybe it's done on the computer, but it's still just very vague, and you got to figure out all the details, and then they want you to submit shop drawings of what you're going to make. So there's that. And then there's times where you'll get someone that wants you to do something that's creative on your own. So some of the creative projects like that, I would, the design team at Nordstrom's would come to me and they'd say, we want to design a sculpture piece for the women's department. And the first one we did was, and they said that at the time it was the trends were, the industrial look and the live edge and the kind of rustic stuff. Mm-hmm. It was really popular, and it still is.
I still like that look.
Yeah. But I'd say it really was on fire like 8 years ago. Mm-hmm. And so they wanted a female form that was abstract, was industrial, but also feminine. And so they gave these all these contradicting things. And so I had to try to work something together that met that criteria. And we did. We call it it's the female form that we first did, and as of today, we've created 36 of them, and they've been sent to the different stores across the country. And we actually retired that design in 2019, and we did an updated version of it, and it was for the women's handbags department. And that one, the goal of that one was to become more refined, a little more elegant, step away from the industrial looking one. The industrial looking one, I carved this foam. I went to Home Depot. I grabbed the insulation, boards, the 4x8 pink insulation. I glued 30 of them up or something. I made a block that was 30 by 30 by 8 foot. And then I just took your typical saws and grinders and files, and I carved this feminine shape. And then from there, I laid out a grid, almost like puzzle pieces, basically. And then I took the plasma cutter by hand, and I took 3/16 mild steel, and I cut these shapes out of the mild steel. And then I took some mallets and sandbags, and I just hammered them, slight curves into it. And it's 3/16 steel, so it's still pretty thick.
Yeah, you're going to be beating on that pretty heavy.
Yeah, but honestly, to get these gradual curves, it didn't need a ton. And what I learned quickly is the more I beat on it, the more I actually made more work for myself. So once I figured out, the right amount of,
kind of finesse it,
it gave me a lot better. And then what I did after that is then I pieced all the puzzles together, and then I welded it, but I didn't try to make a perfect TIG weld. I actually intentionally tried to make it look like it was more of molten metal, almost. My intention was for it to look like lava, kind of. So it was so the welds were very fluent and had a lot of motion to them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. They weren't sloppy. There was a lot of technique in it, but I did, manipulate the gas on my welder to actually, I did a little both. If you take all the gas away, then you're just going to put, big nasty welds with a bunch of open, pockets in it.
Yeah.
I actually turned up the gas so it had more gas, so it had more time to cure and finish. Again, it's just another way of just kind of adjusting your tools to get a certain look. But it's up on our Instagram. It's towards the bottom because we had been doing those we've been doing those for like 10 years or something like that. So yeah, that was an example of them coming to me just wanting a real artistic piece. So
We're going to go ahead and take a quick commercial break. This segment of the Arc Junkies podcast is brought to you by Strong Hand Tools. They make better tools at a better price. Take charge of your metalworking productivity line, reduce setup project time, and increase productivity in metalworking today with Strong Hand. You can check them out today at stronghandtools.com/ArcJunkies. We're also brought to you by AHP Welders, which are ideal for students, hobbyists, and makers. Want to get into welding but don't want to break the bank or sacrifice performance? Head on over to ahpwelds.com and you can pick up a machine for under $1,000. I recently used their 201 XD and was pleasantly surprised by how well it performed. This would be a great machine for anybody trying to get into AC or DC TIG or stick welding in the garage or small shop. Let's go ahead and get back into the show. When you do this stuff, how do you quantify or put a time on how long is it going to take you to create this one-off piece? Because, like you said, you've got design, you had to go to Home Depot and make like essentially a sculpture, before you can even start, cutting the metal to the shapes and bending it and tacking it up and welding it out, and it's all custom. It's one-off pieces. You're trying to get tools to do things that are unconventional, things that they're not developed or designed to do. How do you plan all that when you're kind of like bidding this work out? Because you can't say, oh yeah, I've done this before. It's going to take me, 2 guys, 80 hours. So I'm going to be, I got 160 billable hours here. It can't be like that. So, how do you put a time frame on that?
You just open up a whole nother topic really there on how to bid this stuff. Because you're right. Like a lot of this stuff's never been created before. So it's super hard to guess. The more you do it, I guess the better idea you have, at least, be like, well, this probably take a week or two. So, you say for 80 hours or something, but the good thing with when we would work with Nordstrom's is there was quantities. So the first one, you might have a lot more time into it, but the other, you make up for it on the other ones.
Yeah. I was just talking to Brad Frazier about that, like him doing batch work, because he does small runs of 100 parts and 100 pieces. And we were talking about, as a fabricator, it's cheaper to buy more than one. When you get that one off, that's kind of that's your test piece. You're putting everything, you're figuring out all the little nuances and how to finesse it and how to work it and all the little quirks and the details. And then as you start working more and more, you figured out how to do that more efficient, more accurate. How am I going to, especially when you're doing a lot of pieces. So I think that's just kind of the life we face as fabricators, putting things together. One-offs are always going to be more expensive than a batch run, because once you get that first one figured out, now you get a template. Now you get a system in place, and then you just start cranking through the rest of it.
100%, yeah. One-off stuff, you got to charge a premium.
Yeah.
And the best way to do it is if your client's willing to work for, do the time and material is the best way. You can put one together, and then once you've done one, then you can have a better idea of what it's going to be. And like you said, you can, as you're doing it, you're going to find other solutions. And also, if you have the batch work, a lot of times it's worth spending the time to make fixtures and jigs. That exponentially increases your time.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're also doing quantities, you can get help, so you can get somebody in the shop to go cut out 400 of those pieces and deburr them and clean them up and get them ready for the fabricators. So a lot of the one-off stuff in the fabricator ends up doing, but once you know what you're doing, you can delegate a lot of those other tasks that, let's say, a skilled welder doesn't need to be wasting.
Doesn't got to focus
on
time and efforts and stuff on.
Yeah, and it's really important to have that in the shop too, because that's how people get their foot in the door. You know, you get, that's how you learn too. You get in there and that's what you do. You know, you do the entry level stuff, and as you want to work your way up, then without the entry level stuff, it's pretty hard to get in somewhere. So
yeah, I've talked to people like that before, and it's like everybody kind of understands that. That's the way that we came up. You got to go through, and it's literally you're paying your dues. You're going through and kind of doing all the grunt work and everything. Things that nobody else wants to do. The experienced guy doesn't have the time, and his efforts and his skill set is more valuable somewhere else. So you need those people. And I mean, it's a good place to start, and you learn a tremendous amount that way. So that way when you're doing it on your own or by yourself, you've walked through every stage of the process, from being the guy that's unpacking the material to drawing out the initial shapes, cutting them out, deburring them, cutting them, doing every step of the way. You're learning a little bit about each process. And I think that's what helps people out as a fabricator. Everybody wants to just walk into a shop, make $30 an hour and be God's gift to welding without going through the aches and pain, essentially the growing pains of becoming a fabricator.
I guarantee those guys that are the top dogs already did all that. That's
exactly. You got to pay your dues, and I mean, they're going to show you along the way to make things a little bit easier for you as you're going. But yeah, everybody's got to start somewhere.
It's definitely the best way to learn, through experience. You can't read a book and just all of a sudden know. I mean, it's just real life experience, and that's why it's important for you to have passion for it, because it does take time. And if it's something you're not into, it's gonna phase out, and you're just gonna move on to the next thing. But if you really like it, that's how you get through the hard times on any project, on anything in life, really. If you're passionate about it, there's always going to be hard times. I mean, and not every day is like, this fun, put in your music and, have a, great time every day. There's a lot of bullshit to it, I mean, just like any career of anything, So,
yeah.
I mean,
it's not always fun.
I didn't have a lot of fun today trying to pick up this heavy steel panel and clad a fireplace, and then we put it up 3 times and it wouldn't fit, and then we had to take it down, grind it, put it up, test it, take it down, grind it, but that's just part of it. But we got it up and it looked beautiful, and the client's super happy. So I mean, that's what you're trying to do, right? So
cut it twice and it's still too short.
Yeah, man, this was something today. Like because the ceiling was not straight, and we had to lean it up into place. The ceiling was facing down, so like we would go, and then we'd remove the space to get it in there, and then we'd move a little bit back, and then all of a sudden another spot, and then we'd move that, and then we had to keep working our way until we got it in there. But
there's days that just suck. There's always, right? No matter, that's life. It's any trade, whatever you get into. I mean, there's shitty days, and then there's days that it's like, that's why I do what I do. The days where everything comes together, all the hard work and everything pays off. That kind of offsets the suck. But I think sometimes we got to go through it, and you got to embrace the suck and get the job done, because that's what's paying the bills, and it's not always fun, cool projects. Sometimes you got to take some of the shit work to get to the next bigger, better project.
Hey, that's what makes winning special, right?
Yeah.
If you always win and you never have any bad days and you never lose, then the winning's not special.
Yeah, it's boring. So, did you guys have to shift gears, or did you guys get impacted by COVID, or are you still doing all the custom art pieces and stuff that's rolling in, or have you guys had to make any changes and adjustments, being a special kind of artistic fabricator?
Oh yeah, no, we got drastically affected. Are you kidding me? I mean, we've had to pivot. Yeah, we've had to pivot every way we could try to find, especially when our main customers are retail,
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I mean, they got hit the hardest. Yeah,
retail's, restaurants, and sports arenas, and that just stops. And then your other big part of is creative, artistic sculptures that people don't really need in a pandemic. It's not an essential thing that people are buying. Yeah, we pivoted for sure. Luckily, for when you're a fabricator, you can make anything, right? So what happened was all of it went to residential. So people were staying home, and they weren't spending their money on going out or doing anything. So they're like, oh, well, I'll redo my basement, or I need a new fireplace, or I finally built this deck and I need the handrails and there's a staircase. And here in Seattle, there's a ton of construction, and with all the IT, people and jobs, I mean, there's a ton of work, and a lot of the houses, because we're kind of landlocked, there's not a ton of room to just start expanding and building, communities and stuff. So the demand for houses is high here. And so people will buy these houses and then they want to remodel them. So, and then there's a lot of the trends are decorative metalwork. So that was a big part of what we've shipped. Well, we have always done it. We were focusing on the other stuff. So we were just able to just pick that up more.
Kind of geared that side back up a little bit more. That was a big thing that I heard, because I follow a lot of stocks and stuff, and all your online retailers were doing good, but home improvement sales and residential construction costs, everything was that was going insane, because everybody's stuck at home, so they see all the projects that they've been putting off. I should really, go ahead and paint the house and recaulk this. And it'd be cool if, we went ahead and put that swimming pool in. Cause like you said, you got a lot of tech companies up there. So all the nerds up in their penthouses that are, making ridiculous amounts of money for, running IT support out of their, their bedroom or whatever. They've got the money, they've got the time, and, they're not hurting because they're working from home.
You have no idea. Like you just said, oh man, it's crazy too. And what I've noticed is that when the stock market, I watch it too. So when everything just started going up, especially the tech stuff, all these people had stock from, their jobs when they started. So their wealth just catapulted with everything.
Especially the GameStop guys for about a week.
Yeah. I mean, it's good for guys like us because, we got these people that we just had a job. The guy was the early Amazon investor, you know what I mean? And he doesn't have to work the rest of his life. Yeah. And so he's redoing his house, and it's a $3 million remodel or something. And he just breaks off $1 million when a little bit of stock.
Yeah.
Gets, he works. So, it's like you said, sometimes living in Washington, it can kind of get to you with the weather, and the winters are a little long. I mean, they're it's kind of actually boring because we don't get a ton of snow. It's just rain a lot, but at the same time, because of all the tech stuff is here, there's a lot of opportunity to do this type of work that we were doing. So, and in fact, actually, I could go into a whole other thing. And then here in Seattle, we have a very, very unique metal craftsman industry, I guess. So, and what it's come from, what I think when I see, because is from Boeing. So there's a lot of Boeing. There was a lot of machine shops up here. So there's a lot of that Boeing used to sub a lot of work out to. Over time, recently, maybe the last 20 years or so, they, maybe 10, 20, whatever, they've subbed a lot of it overseas. And I've watched a lot of these machine shops go under, which I've went to a lot of auctions, and that's where a lot of my tools come from. Mm-hmm. But it's interesting that there's an industry here for metal fabricators, and it's a high end industry too. It's I think it's unique to other places in the country. There was it's famous here. I don't know about, the rest of the country, but architectural metal fabricator, Glossa, and it was really big in the 90s. And And he was, that was kind of the beginning of it. And he did what we do on a higher, he did a lot of, custom furniture that would go into design centers, and then they would sell there. But it sparked a ton of craftsmen. And then unfortunately he passed away. And then when he did, all the people that worked for him kind of branched out and did their own thing, and they've all just still been going. And there's a very unique network of very highly skilled craftsmen in this metal fabrication world that I think that's unlike any other. I thought I was kind of used to it, but then as I started traveling around a little more, and we're starting to get jobs down in Palm Springs and different parts of the country, and you go down there, and these contractors are like, oh, there's nobody that's can do the quality that
Yeah, there's not a lot of places that kind of do that type of work. So you guys have like your own little metalworking maker community. Sounds like
I mean, it really is.
You ever do any like collaborations with other companies where you guys are working on the same project, kind of bringing two different styles together?
Well, I think we help each other out. So
Okay.
like, I think it's kind of like a tattoo shop, like you kind of have your own style. And so like we do more of the creative stuff. We work hand in hand with other shops. There's a guy that has a huge break in Pacific sheet metal, James over there. We work a lot with him, and he does stuff that we can't do, and we do stuff that he can't do. So whenever we can help each other out, we call each other up. And there's a lot of other shops too that have just tools, like if we have the CNC plasma cutter, but if we need something water jet, then we got to reach out to somebody else. And I feel that, maybe 15 years ago, there was more of a competitive, like, you're the enemy.
Yeah.
Like, you're stealing my work. Maybe it was like before more of the social media and Instagram and stuff like that, like where
kind of
they wouldn't hide their trade secrets, And
I think social media has kind of united us in that fact to where, oh shit, there's enough work out here for everybody. And if we work together, we can help each other where you're weak, I may be strong and I can help you out with this, and, vice versa. And it's reciprocal. Like I got two buddies. Well, I got a buddy that he works with another guy. They're like each own a small time, like structural steel company. So they'll do like ornamental gates. They'll do structural rehabs. And when one of them really can't handle the work, they'll kind of sub the other guy in. So they're constantly back and forth. Like, hey man, I got a job I can put you on over here for 6 weeks. Oh, perfect. Because, in 6 weeks, I've got another job kicking off that I could actually use your help on. And so they work together, and obviously whoever's landed the bid is going to make a little bit more money, but they contract each other back and forth because both of them still want to run their small businesses, but they'll contract with one another to do this, one building that individually they're too small for.
Yeah,
so they'll kind of work together to knock this stuff out. And I was like, that's actually kind of cool. And he recommended to me, do the same thing. If you get the opportunity and you're working on something, subcontract it out to one of your buddies that, does very similar work. That way you're both, doing well the whole time.
100%. I mean, I've done that with actually the guy I was just talking with before. We've had jobs that came and we were just so swamped. I didn't want to turn down the work from the client because, you don't
want to lose the client.
They might not, you don't lose the client. So I'm like, hey man, I need some help. And he's like, perfect. We're a little slow right now. And so, like you said, we'll make some money, but you may not make as much money as if you did it, but at least you do the job and you get through and the client's happy and this guy's happy and you made some. And it's a better way to navigate. We were just talking about this today because there was a shop here in Seattle that did the stuff we do. And I think it was back again, like more of like the 90s and stuff again, before social media, where like everybody was competing. anyway, I guess he was a real dick, you know, like no one liked him, like his staff, his people, he treated him like shit, whatever. And anyway, long story short, when hard times came, he didn't have anybody to reach out to, you know, and he went under, and now he works at Home Depot. So, you know, I think it's better to remember that, to not burn any bridges. And you know, there's going to be times where you're going to need to reach out to somebody and need a hand, you know, we're not all invincible. And
yeah,
the minute you start getting cocky like that, then
that's the thing, is like everybody gets cocky and like they want to drag up. And, you know, for anybody that's not familiar with that term, you grab your tools and leave, and you kind of leave on, a lot of times you leave on bad terms. But that's one thing I've always tried to avoid, is burning any bridges. And that's helped me out so much, like along my career. There's a company that I worked for, you know, that I was like, hey man, things just aren't working out. I don't see myself here in 10 years. I want to go out and I want to get some additional training. I want to get some schooling and stuff. And, you know, it's just not working out. I don't see myself here long-term. And I'd already been with the company probably 3 or 4 years. And they were like, hey man, that's cool. We completely get it. We understand. We back you 100%. We want you to do nothing but, you know, do well for yourself. And now I do consulting work for them. I help all their welders, bring them up to par, help them out with weld qualifications, different training and stuff like that. So, I mean, I kept, you know, had I like left on bad terms or burnt that bridge, they wouldn't be calling me now.
Hey, you nailed it 100%. It's being a man. It's just doing what you say and being stand up, and you know, it's just being a good person too. You know, that company helped you. I mean, it gave you a job.
Yeah, they gave me a job. They put food on my table. They put a house, you know, roof over my head and everything. And I mean, they were always decent to me. And it sucked leaving, but I just, like I said, I wanted to continue on a path of growth. And I was like, okay, I've kind of topped out here from where I'm at. Like, I know that I'm not, you know, my next step would be, you know, in the office somewhere doing something. And that's not going to happen, because the only people that are in the office are the owners of the company. And they're not going to give me shares of that, you know? So it's like, I'm going to be running a crew, putting structural buildings together, it was awesome at the time, but it was like, at the time I wanted more. I was like, what else is out there? What other things? And I think a lot of fabricators and welders go through that same thing. It's not like where you get into a company at the bottom floor and work for 20 years anymore. Like my grandfather, I think he put like 30 some odd years into truck driving, you know, for the same company. He started at the age of 16 driving truck for this company and retired at the age of, I think he was 65, 70 by the time he was finally done. And then he was like running dispatch work from the house. So things aren't like that with welding. You know, there's not a lot of people that get in at the ground floor and they put in 20, 30 years. It's like you kind of go from one shop to the next for a couple of years till you find your niche, till you find your strong points, and you keep growing along the way. And then you finally land a good spot that you're happy with, you're comfortable with, you get paid well, you get good benefits, and you love what you're doing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and I don't think any employer probably expects anybody to work their entire lives. So, you know, and like if you do it right, like you said, and like, I think people understand that. It's better to do it right though, because, you know, I see guys that will quit and just walk right out the door for an extra $1 an hour or something. And, you know, and if you do that every 6 months, a year, you know, then all of a sudden you start growing a reputation for that. Yep. And
you can be circling back to the places that you left for $1 more to come back and work for $3 less because nobody else wants to hire you.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So again, it's, you know, just, it's important to, you know, have integrity and to do what you say.
Definitely. So where can people find more information about RedSoul?
Well, RedSoul.com is our website, and RedSoul_Seattle is the Instagram. There's, you know, the Instagram's probably got more updated pictures and stuff like that. And then RedSoul.com will show a lot of the stuff that we've done with Nordstrom's and the other restaurants and things like that.
Okay. Yeah, I was pilfering through when we first hooked up. I was pilfering through your Instagram and stuff. You guys got some really neat pieces on there, and I'm trying to as I'm looking at them, I'm trying to figure out how you would fabricate that. Like in my head, I'm trying to work through the steps. Like where the hell would you even start on something like that?
Yeah. There's some creative things for sure. You Which one did you have in mind when you're thinking I could try?
Just like everything. I mean, I like the circular piece that you had with all the different shelves. I thought that was kind of neat. That would, like if I was to build that, it'd look really cool in the living room. That was the one that stuck out to me the most. But, like everything has just got the different shapes and the tones and how things are like formed. Because you have a lot of pieces that make a lot of twists and turns and it flows. Like, I don't know, this piece right here.
Yeah, that's the new sculptural piece of the design I was talking about.
Yeah, it's like
that was the one I was talking about, the feminine form. That one is a lost cast wax process. So people that aren't familiar with that, it's casting. So the very beginning of that project, that was a great one. It's one of my favorite one, 2019 for sure. Again, they came to me, they said, we want this feminine form. I put my headphones in one evening. I just drew these forms. I went on Pinterest, Instagram, found pictures of basically women, like a gown dress, like you'd go to dinner or, prom or something. And it was the shape. And then again, I just would put the music in and I made the forms and sketches and then I presented it to them. And I presented 6 or 7 different designs, and then they picked one, and then from there I created a miniature model out of I carved it out of foam. It was about 18 inches. They checked that off. They approved that, and then from there I scaled it up to a 6 foot tall version. And the scaling of it is very simple. In fact, I actually tried to do some technology on that. I went to this guy and he's like, "Oh, I got a 3D scanner, and I'll take your carved model piece, and I'll scan it, and I can blow it up to 6 feet tall." And man, oh man, I don't even know why I paid the guy, because it looked like a used condom or something. When I got this thing back, I was like, "What are you talking about?" Like,
doesn't even look the same.
I saved it because it was so unbelievable. I was gonna throw it in the garbage, but it was so unbelievable I kept it just for that reason. But anyway, then I just said, I was like, "Screw it, I'll just do it by hand." Mm-hmm. And so just a super simple grid system. You have a drawing that's 18 inches. You draw a grid. I take a piece of construction paper that's 6 feet long, and you draw the same grid, and you transfer those lines into that grid, and you blow it up into that size. And then once you have that, I transferred over onto some foam. And this time I used I didn't use the insulation foam from Home Depot, but that stuff does work good. Actually, when you do use the insulation stuff from Home Depot, the glue and the lines, you can actually use that to make if you want to do something that has symmetry, you can use that to guide and make them even, because you can use the lines. But on the one that I did, for the one that you just were talking about, my buddy worked at a construction site, and he had these big blocks of foam, like they build bridges with and stuff, those big, I don't know what they're exactly called, but I just saw a big block of foam that I could carve something in. So I got my hands on one of those, and that's what I carved that out of. Man, I made a mess too. The shop it looked like it was snowed in there or something.
Covered everywhere.
Oh yeah, it was definitely everywhere. But yeah. So then once that form was made, I took it to a casting company in Tacoma, Washington, called Two Ravens, and they're a lost cast wax process, and that's where they will take your form and they basically coat it in like a rubber mold. And then once the mold is made, there's a negative, and then there's a whole process. But do you talk about that? Have you ever talked about that process much? Probably not. Yeah.
No, not yet.
But the reason why we do it. So, all right. So the lost cast wax. So you take your image, your sculpture, whatever it is, and you put this rubber silicone around it. So then you have a negative of the space. You peel it out, open it up, and then you pour in your resin, or there's like a cement shell around it. So you build this capsule, and then there's a spout, and then you can melt the bronze and copper or whatever alloy you use, and then you pour it in, and it makes your piece. And that's not the best description of the last cross wax process.
No, I'm gonna have to look it up now because I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, it's how you look it up. You really will like it. People listening to will look it up. It's how you can make pieces that have like holes and intricate pieces. It's a process used for industry and machine shops. Like blocks of like your aluminum, whatever, a motor is made that way. I mean, when you cast the block of a motor,
okay, gotcha.
Engine, there's holes and cavities in it.
Yeah.
And there's just a casting process. So it's what these people do is more artistic. Okay. And the shop that Benny was talking about when he worked for the Wall Auto Foundry, they do all these massive like artistic sculptural pieces. And a lot of the most common material is bronze. And so that piece you're looking at there was carved out of foam. They did the lost cast wax process of the mold making, and then they poured the silicon bronze into that form. It created that shape. They gave it to us in like 4 different pieces, and Benny actually put those together. And that is where the welding comes in, because you need to do the TIG welding with the silicon bronze. And then also that's where the metal forming and moving to make everything line up. And then the texturing to
keep
make
it all
the welds
symmetrical
blend so it all looks like one piece.
Okay. Yeah, because it looks freaking amazing. It's very, very, like you said, sexy. It's contoured. Yeah. You can kind of see that, that's what you're going for. It does look like a gown, but it's really neat how it's got that appeal, the look to it, and then the way that everything, kind of flows together.
Yeah, there's a whole side of metal fabrication that for me, that's like what I like. I love the idea of chandeliers. You go into some resort or something, you look up and there's like a 20-foot, beautiful metal chandelier, and you can have glass hanging on it or whatever. I think that there's also really great opportunities for water features, fountains, things like that the metal fabrication world, or the metal fabrication skills you can get into. And then you have all kinds of different like tables and pieces of furniture. That the creativity is endless. I mean, it's pretty wide open for sure.
Definitely a neat process, and I like understanding more and learning more about like the artistic side of it, because there's just so much to welding and metalworking that we as welders don't get exposed to every avenue of it. So I like taking an in-depth look at other areas, see what other people are doing to master that manipulation of metal, and different welding processes that that go along with it. And because a lot of people they're stuck on one process and one type of niche area in welding, and that's really all they ever know. So that's kind of like one of the biggest reasons I like doing the podcast is I get to take a look into like aerospace or the pipeline or the artistic side of it, and just see how all this stuff kind of comes together, and everybody's taking a different journey, a different path, and they all have a different ending point.
Yeah, that's what I find so fascinating about it. It's there's a lot of opportunity, and it's what you bring to it, or the creativity and imagination that you have. The key is to figure out how to make money at it too. So
yeah,
you can be creative and make all kinds of stuff, but if no one buys it, you're not going to be able to do it for too long. So.
Right.
But yeah, and I think that you're right. When someone maybe that's younger thinks of a welder, they have this stereotype in their head, where maybe it's their uncle or whatever, somebody that's like grimy and dirty in some shop that's falling apart, and and they don't want to go in the Florida down there and sweat and just that sounds horrible. Being all dusty and dirty and sweaty and humid and all that. So, and up here, in the wintertime, it's cold and rainy, and if you're going out in the field in the middle of the snow, that's miserable too. So, but there's other ways. Again, like, you don't have to do what everybody thinks of right off the bat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of different aspects, a lot of different pathways to it.
Yeah, for sure. And there's I would highly recommend anybody is getting interested in it is to definitely the TIG welding for sure.
Mm-hmm.
The TIG welding opens. We don't even. I mean, we have. I think we have a MIG welder back there, but like, we just TIG weld everything because you can do all the alloys. This depending on how much amps your machine could go, you can weld. You can TIG weld whatever as thick as you want. I got a torch out there that's got a 1/4-inch tungsten in it.
Jeez. I've heard of those, but like, I've never like grabbed one and tried them out.
Yeah, I mean, we got a job that came through that was for this aerospace project, and we needed to weld like, I don't remember what it was like 3/4-inch aluminum plate. So like, and they were gonna like attach this, whatever it was, some some super rocket ship, and they were gonna send it to the bottom of the ocean. And if it fell off in the ocean, we were gonna be in big trouble. So we had to make sure that we were welding this aluminum and getting maximum penetration. So yeah, we ended up buying this torch and using it. But you got to have we have a 350 sinker waves. I think that was maxed out too, like just pushing it. And I'm sure that tungsten could have handled a lot more too.
Yeah. Yeah. 1/4-inch. That's pretty impressive.
It actually kind of is. I have them now just because I think it's almost like, check this out. Yeah. It blows your mind.
That's like, I got one of the 3/4-inch diameter stick rods in my classroom. I was like, all right, yeah, we're going to stick weld today. And they're looking at it like, holy shit.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah.
It's pretty neat to have those laying around the shop. It's a good conversation starter.
Yeah. And the job comes in, you can do it.
It's got to be pretty damn heavy too. Like 1/4-inch tungsten. Like tungsten is, I mean, like we always pick it up 16th, 8th-inch diameter. It's like, but if you pick up like a block of tungsten or like a 1/4-inch rod of tungsten, it's freaking ridiculously dense. So it's heavy.
Yeah, I think it's actually one of the most dense alloys there are, right? I mean, that's why we can hold up to all the heat. And yeah, no, it was probably $100 a stick of it too, probably. So
you keep that away from my students. So we going through 3 of them a day, man.
Yeah. But I think 2020 was a big change. I feel that 2021 is come back around. I think people are getting back at it. I think it's I think the worst is behind us. I think people that are don't be discouraged. There's still stuff out there.
Yeah.
To move forward to. Yeah.
No, it's cool that you guys were able to be resilient and kind of work through the different changes that that kind of, because nobody saw that coming. Nobody saw a massive shutdown coming, and like the end of small businesses and retail brick and mortar stores and restaurants and all that. Like, nobody really. I mean, if you would have told me that and it was like this time last year, I was getting ready to go on spring break, and then the next thing you know, they're like, "Oh, we're going to take an extra week off of school for this, just to kind of see how everything goes." And then the next thing you know, it's like, okay, it's going to be 2 weeks. But then we're going to come back and, everything's going to go back to normal. It's like, oh, shit, shut everything down. Don't move. Everybody stay where you're at for the next 3 months. And it's like, yeah, I didn't see that coming. And I just, like, the month before flew, out to San Diego and back. And then I'm like, shit, like, I don't, I mean, like, do I have it? What is this going on? Because it was, like, big over there. And I was like, yeah, I don't know what to think about all this stuff. It was kind of nerve-wracking in the beginning.
Yeah.
Now it's like becoming the new norm.
Yeah. It was like you just said, this time last year, we were just wrapping up all our research and development. We typically do that with Nordstrom's in the beginning of the year and wintertime, because we would need to have all our orders in before the holiday season.
Yeah.
And then once the holiday season, there's a couple months where, come up for air. But during that time is when we would spend that time on the new techniques and finding the new designs and things like that. And then, March would come along. I'd have to have it all turned in. And then, like you just said, middle of March is when the lights got turned out. But, again, you gotta just work through it. When times are tough, you get to work, at least that's what we do.
Feast or famine.
You get through it and you push through it, and you gotta be careful, but man, you can't live scared,
Yeah.
I'm over. I'm so over now. I mean, but you still gotta be a little careful.
Yeah. All right, Matt. Well, it was great talking to you, man. Thanks for stopping by.
Definitely appreciate that, and it was really, really good. Great talking with you today.
All right, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure to swing by the Arc Junkies website where you can see a full list of episodes, sponsors, and the links to the merch if you want to buy any Arc Junkies apparel. Feel free to hit me up on Instagram at Arc Junkies Podcast, or feel free to email me, show@arcjunkies.com. Stay safe out there, and until next time, make every weld better than your last.